Welcome to the Miami Jewish Film Festival, the world largest film festival of its kind. We want to thank you, all our members, sponsors, community partners, all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsor, the Center for Advancement of Jewish Education, and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation for the continued support throughout all these years. My name is Yehuda Michael, Senior Community Ambassador of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, sent by the Jewish Agency for Israel. And I am excited to be moderating a virtual conversation with director Dr. Malka Shabtay from the movie Nafkot, Yearning, which is premiering at this year's festival. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Shabtay, also for joining us.
Good evening.
Thank you. We really appreciate that you are with us. I will start by asking you a very personal question. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you now, and where have you lived and living right now also?
So I was born in Jerusalem. I'm an Israeli. Most of my life I live in Israel, but not all, because I travel a lot all over the world since I was very young. I'm involved with Ethiopian Jews in Israel and in Ethiopia, actually for the last 40 years. I wrote several books, and since the last 3 years, I got involved of making films, documentary films. And I am a mother of one daughter. She's now a soldier in the army, so we can sleep peacefully. Otherwise, I've been living in the US, traveled a lot and visited all over the world, but especially I share my life between Ethiopia and Brazil.
Oh, that's really great. Let's talk about a movie actually. How did you get into filmmaking? Is there any filmmaker that inspired you to make filmmaking, or is that a coincidence that leads you into to be a filmmaker? Professionally, are you a filmmaker professionally?
First of all, I'm an applied anthropologist. I taught in Israeli academia for 30, 40 years, most of my life. And when I became 60 years old, I decided to go to film school. And I studied in Tel Aviv University. At that time, I was already involved with this community, with the Beta Israel community of Kachane and Sami Shoah. I was already involved with them in Ethiopia. And after 2 years of research and engagement with the community told me that they are ready, the community leadership told me they are ready to stop hiding and desire to share the story with the rest of the world. So I was a very good student in film school. And actually, while studying, I already did my first filming trip to Ethiopia, and then my second trip, and continuously working on the film. And together with the film, and we also decided to write a book for those who are interested in more in-depth information. So the book has been written by people from the community, mainly my film heroes and partners, about the history, Jewish religious culture, and what does it mean to live with continuously a stigma and local form of anti-Semitism.
Great. I actually want to get more deeper into the film, which is, I would say, a very interesting movie. Can you give us an overview of the process you went through in this making of this process? First of all, also getting the funding to pick to be a role, to take in the casting, and also like the first day of shooting. How was the overall experience look like in making of this documentary?
So it's probably very different from what you have in mind. First of all, it's a community collaborative process. Every step I did was very slow and very careful. We are talking about a community that's still hiding, suffering from persecution, and there is a serious dispute within the community leaders whether they should come out or not yet. So for every step, we had to do a large community gathering to let the elderly people to take the decisions. For example, when I already decided I want to come and shoot, I brought with me an Israeli cinematographer for the first time There we were there. There was a community large meeting, more than 80 people. I presented myself, my plan. They were talking about their experiences. Then they sent me to have my dinner. When I came back from dinner, they told me where I'm going to do my first shooting. This was the first and oldest secret synagogue. They just didn't tell me that it's 2 days drive to get there. And there are no roads, no electricity, a very remote place, and very difficult physically to get there. So this is how it started. And for every step I discussed with them, and when they decided to do a reenactment of the red cow ceremony, I had to pay to buy a cow. And then we discussed why they agreed to do reenactment, why they are open and ready enough to share a tradition from the first temple that is very sacred, when they didn't let me to see the original ceremony yet, but they wanted to do the reenactment for the film. So everything was in a very deep and intensive collaboration. This is my way of working. I'm an applied anthropologist. Now, the question of funding, it's a very interesting question, and the answer is very simple. When I applied to film grants, they all gave me great compliments about the quality of the shooting, about the access, and about this amazing discovery of this Jewish community. But at that time, I was already 61 years old. They didn't believe that I can really complete a film. So I didn't got $1 from any film grants. So I became 62, and in Israel, we have the right to pull up all our retirement grants at once when you are 62 years old. And I understood that this is not another artistic film work. This is the life of this community. This is their destiny. And the film for me is just part of my struggle for this community recognition in Israel and in Ethiopia, which we will mention later on. And I took my life decision to take and use all my retirement grant, 300,000 US dollars, to sponsor the film, to pay all my team, to all the filmmaking process. And I went to Ethiopia during 4.5 years for 7 times, just came back from my last visit 7 times. I was in Ethiopia for my community work, for the film, for screenings. And this is how I was able to do the film.
Wow, this is fascinating. This is fascinating just to hear all the process you've been through. I think that we're gonna lead me into the next question actually. Why is this making this movie is important to you? And what is the overall experience that you have with the crew and the people surrounding and making this movie?
First of all, as I mentioned before, I am working with Ethiopian Jews, both in Israel and in Ethiopia, for the last 40 years. This is my life. There was very little before, and ever since, this is the main part of my life. I also worked in the Israeli embassy in Ethiopia 30 years ago. So I work in Israel with all the organizations, NGO, government, police, army, universities, on behalf of Ethiopian Jews. And, you know, in the last 10 years with Ethiopian Jewish colleagues and so on and so on. But the story of this film is very unique because I heard about this community 28 years ago in a conference in Venice. And the British Ethiopian historian, late Professor Richard Pankhurst, told us about the community, and we did not believe him that there are more Beta Israel communities in Ethiopia. So we all heard it and ignored it, as well as myself. And even when I worked in the Israeli embassy, we didn't know and we didn't do anything in regards of this community. But 4.5 years ago, I got a phone call from an Ethiopian Israeli friend who already who live in Ethiopia or share his life between Ethiopia and Israel. And he told me he met this guy, Balainet Azebku, who presented himself as a Beta Israel, and he didn't know anything about it, although he was Ethiopian Jew himself. So I talked with him on the phone, and he actually told me the story one by one, as it is written in the article of Richard Pankhurst. And at this time, I was on my way to visit another Jewish community, the Lemba of Zimbabwe. This was Pesach. I flew to Zimbabwe and to see how they keep their Jewish traditions. And on my way back, I stopped in Addis for 7 hours. And I asked them to organize for me a meeting with 40 people. And I came to Ethiopia, I met the people, and I returned to Israel. And I said, look, I'm a private person, and let me discuss it with all my colleagues within the Ethiopia community, with the Israeli government, with rabbis, and so on. And I returned to Israel and start discussing with different people. And actually, they all told me the same thing. Please keep quiet, Malka. We are not ready for another Beta Israel community in Ethiopia. Let us complete the mission with those who are waiting, known by the name Mura for many years. We are not ready to hear these stories now. And actually what I did, ask my God, what shall I do with it? I cannot ignore that I know about this community now, but I'm a private person, no funds, a single mother. What shall I do with it? And even I turned to some American organizations, I don't want to mention the names right now, that are dealing with diverse Jewish communities, and they also rejected me. So the answer I got was, keep going, and people will join you, and go on your way. I didn't know at that time that it will be already 4.5 years, all my funds, all my time, and big struggles, the struggles for recognition, formal recognition of this community as part of the larger Beta Israel community, which I'm doing in Israel. Now I work a lot with Ethiopian community spiritual leaders, the Kesoch, and Ethiopian rabbis, as well as with Orthodox rabbi in Israel, Rabbi Eliyahu Birenboim, which I will surprise you a bit later on with him. We do amazing things together, but the journey is still long. I work in collaboration with President Bougie Herzog, that was the chairperson of the Jewish Agency before, and I'm getting ready to meet the new chairperson. And I work with a lot of parliament members and other people. In Ethiopia, we have very big struggle because this community do not have human, religion, and civil rights. So the first thing we achieved in Ethiopia, following the inauguration of the film at Addis Ababa University, in the presence of the Israeli ambassador, the first thing we got finally is land for Jewish cemetery for the first time in history. We already got it. We already also got land to build up a synagogue and community center. We got this important historical lands from the mayor of Addis Ababa, who accepted and apologized for the situation of this Beta Israel community. Also, the Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy, keeps saying that until the Jews will be an integral, equal part in Ethiopia, Ethiopia will never get peace. So this leads us to work with interfaith organizations. And after the first screening, we got many, many phone calls from Christian organizations that ask apology, that didn't know about the poor situation of the community, and offer collaborations, which we already started. We have many more plans and initiatives in Ethiopia, which I cannot share all right now, but the journey is still long. Just one more aspect I want to tell you.
Yes.
As I said, I shared my life this year. It was my own sabbatical with invitations of my colleagues between Brazil and Ethiopia again and again and again. I just returned from Ethiopia. And what I can tell you, that when I screened the film in Israel, among Ethiopian Jews, veteran Ethiopian Jews, the Gondarian and the Tigrinian Jews in Israel, I get very interesting reactions. The elderly people usually cry throughout the film, and I ask them why they cry. And they tell me, first, it is our own story too. We remember our past traumas as living as Beta Israel in Ethiopia. Then they also tell me, we feel sorry and regret as we forgot our sisters and brothers. We knew about them. They live in very remote area in the Semi and Shoah region, which is very difficult to access, but we were busy making Aliyah and surviving in Israel, and we just almost forgot about them. The young generations who were mainly born in Israel or came here very young have a totally different reactions. They look at the film and they are totally shocked. They say, how come our elderly families never told us about them? These are our sisters and brothers. And immediately they ask me, how can we help you, Malka? We want to come to Ethiopia. We want to volunteer. What about if we don't speak Amharic? Can we still help you? And actually, this led me to my next big project of getting to establish an Israeli volunteer project in Ethiopia within the community. We want to start a Hebrew school and more and more. Can I tell you at this moment a nice scoop?
I will ask you, which is so impressive because you also answered my next question, which was how the Ethiopian Israelis in Israel react to the movie. Yes, I want to ask you actually to the question says like how the movie had been accepted not only within the Ethiopian Jewish community, but in general. And what leads next to that? Is there anything that comes up after the movie?
Okay, so that's very nice question. One of the things that the community members told me that when they were ready, they said, we want to share our story, both in Israel, in the Jewish world, and around the world, because it's a universal story of survival, of belief against all odds. Now, they put it as a goal. And the film I start sending the film to festivals all over the world. And let me tell you, as I mentioned in the beginning, the film already got like 25 awards. Some of them are first place in festivals all over the world. Some of them anthropological ethnographic films, film festivals, some are general film festivals, some are Jewish film festivals. Now, when I got an award from Bhutan, India, Singapore,
Oh, wow.
So I asked my friends in the community, what do you think about it? They say we are very happy because the expression from Hodu, Mehodu ve'ad Kush, which means we want to cover the whole world actually. We want to bring this story to people all over the world because besides of our own specific community, there are other communities all over the world that don't have the freedom to practice their religious beliefs. They don't have the right for their own identity, that struggle to be accepted, that are humiliated for all kinds of popular beliefs and reasons. So people identified with it and all over the world. And the idea that are going throughout the film is never give up. Stick to your beliefs. The day will come. And actually, the community now are living the realization of this belief. The day will come. Now, let me tell you that when I decided to integrate the film in Israel, I decided that I must bring to Israel for the first time in history the heroes of my film, the three heroes of my film, Balaine, Miki, and Abera. And then I got a new struggle with the authorities in Israel that didn't approve me a visa for them because they suspect that they want to come and stay in Israel illegally. And I had unbelievable struggle together with my friend for many years, Parliament member Gadi Barken, as a friend who struggled with the Ministry of Immigration, and I had to deposit big money to promise that they will not stay in Israel illegally, which was ridiculous. And they came here. I brought them for 10 days. They stayed in my home. We didn't sleep these 10 days. We went all over Jerusalem and all the other places. We met a lot of important people from the Ethiopian community. We did all kinds of plans. And after 10 days, they went back to Ethiopia. And also, so far, I was successful to bring the community cantor, the community Chazan, Michael Moges Demese. I was lucky to bring him, successful to bring him, in collaboration with Rabbi Eliyahu Birenboim, to study for 3 years in the yeshiva. And the big scoop I want to tell you that last week, Rabbi Eliyahu Birenboim himself, very prominent Orthodox rabbi in Israel, came himself to Ethiopia to get to meet the community. And next Friday, we will be discussing the next steps for the recognition and support and strengthening the community. And I will meet the chairperson of the Jewish community to ask him to recognize this community as another Jewish community in the diaspora. There should be no difference between Jewish communities in the US, Latin America, Europe, or anywhere else, and in Ethiopia. So this is where we are going. This is where we are right now.
It is very, very impressive and also a very important job to create awareness and also to take a next step. So it sounds like really important. Thank you so much for sharing. I think one last question that I will have for you is, how did you deal with the language and the culture difference while you're making up this movie? Because I heard you speaking a couple of Amharic words, but how was that whole overall experience to you?
So before we conclude, don't forget our 2 points. First of
No
all,
worries.
I speak Amharic. I work 40 years with Ethiopian Jews. So I speak Amharic. By the way, just before our meeting, I had my Amharic class. Now I'm studying to read and write in Amharic. 40 years are many years to understand language, to be able to get deep into the culture, to eat, to speak, to be very much immersed. Let me tell you that the Semian Shoah region in Ethiopia is very remote area. Can you believe that I'm the one and only white person they ever saw until today? There is no tourism, there is no foreigners there. Richard Pankhurst visited some of the area, but they don't see me as a foreigner. They don't see me, I hope so. I speak the language. When I need translation, I use translation, but I'm very much Ethiopia is my second home. I go free by myself everywhere. I speak the language, I manage. Of course, I'm used to the food and everything else. So this is not, I believe this is not an issue. I know a lot of people in Ethiopia throughout. And also let me tell you that now, one of the next steps, which is very close to complete the mission that I received from the community and do it together, we are preparing for a US tour to go around to speak to our sisters and brothers in the US, and then Brazil tour. We want to share the story. And of course, I will get there together with at least one or more from my partners. We are beginning to plan that. So we will be ready to complete the mission and share the story and get more colleagues and friends. I would like to invite my American sisters and brothers, as well as others, to come and visit the community, to see another way of Judaism that exists since the days of the first temple, and understand that Judaism should be looked as very much diverse and pluralistic. There are no one way or 3 ways to be a Jew. And we should all appreciate these people that, against all odds, still survive, persist as Jews, and truly believe that the last days that are promised by Jeremiah, Yechezkel, and all the other prophets will probably are coming now.
It's really great, and I'm really wishing you good luck with the whole project, which is super important and impressive. That will lead me to my final question to you. What is next to you? What is the new project that you have in mind?
So I continue my life mission on diverse Jewish communities and bringing the story. So since 2010, I'm involved with Moroccan Jews who immigrated since the 18th century to Amazonia. I filmed since 2010, and this year I filmed again descendants of Jews deep in Amazonia in the archipelago of Marajo. I'm already in the beginning of the editing of this first film that will go together with an exhibition in the Jewish Museum in Sao Paulo in the second part of 2023. And I'm also working with the prominent Brazilian filmmaker, George Bodansky, on a film about the Brazilian Jewish historian, Anita Nowinski, who changed the history of Brazil, explored the Inquisition and the phenomenon of Bnei Anusim. And we already have our first teaser, and we are moving forward. And after that, I believe I will move to Zimbabwe. And there are more stories to be told about this amazing historical developments and circumstances of the Jewish people that surprisingly still survive, some returning back, and what is said by our prophets are actually happening these days. And I want to be there.
So impressive, very impressive. Before I do my final remarks, conclusion, is there anything you want to say as a conclusion?
I just want to show you. Can you see that?
Yes, yes.
So the hero of my film is Aber Atashome, who is an artist and who is doing artwork, which I bring to Israel. I bring with me to festivals, and he doing amazing creative artwork of Jewish motifs around the Star of David. And I wish I will bring them all with me when I come to the US. And if anyone of our audiences will be interested to invite us for the tour or communicate with me about other interesting ideas to get involved with the community, this is my final goal, to get people involved, ask questions, and anything else. And you have your way. You can give my WhatsApp and email to anyone that might be interested in communicating with me and get involved with the community. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you to Director Dr. Malka Shabtay for joining us. Once again, thank you all our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, and all of you film lovers for participating in the Miami Jewish Film Festival. Until next year, shalom.
Shalom.